Captain Taiwan stood in the center of the massive chamber, feeling smaller than he ever had in his life. Above him, the ceiling stretched so high that he could barely see where it ended. All around him, beings from across the galaxy sat in their elevated seats, looking down at him like he was an insect under a microscope. This was the third time Taiwan had come to this place. The third time he had stood here, representing all of humanity, asking the Galactic Council to let Earth join their club. And from the looks on their strange faces, this would be the third time they said no. Lieutenant Hana stood beside him, her back straight and her face calm. She had told him before they walked in that she had a bad feeling about this meeting. Taiwan wished he had listened to her instincts. The air in the room felt heavy with contempt. The Varathian ambassador spoke first. He was a tall being made entirely of crystal that glowed with different colors. Right now, his body pulsed with a bright orange color that the translator device in Taiwan's ear told him meant amusement. The alien was laughing at them. "Humanity requests membership once again," the Varathian said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "How optimistic of your species. Tell me, Captain Taiwan, has humanity finally learned to travel through the fifth dimension? Or do you still crawl through space using your primitive chemical rockets?" Taiwan felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "We have advanced our propulsion systems significantly in the past decade. Our fusion drives can now reach fusion drives!" The Varathian's laughter was like breaking glass. "You hear that? Council members? They are proud of their fusion drives." All around the chamber, other aliens joined in the laughter. The Chithari delegates, who looked like giant insects with too many legs, clicked their mandibles together in a sound that Taiwan's translator told him was mocking amusement. The Prelians, beings made of gas that floated in containment fields, swirled in patterns that meant they were laughing too. Hana's hand moved slightly, and Taiwan knew she was fighting the urge to clench her fist. He wanted to do the same thing. They had traveled 6 weeks through space to get here, sleeping in cryopods and waking up stiff and sore, all to be laughed at by beings who thought humans were nothing more than amusing primitives. "Your species has barely mastered four-dimensional travel," the Varathian continued, his colors shifting to a deeper orange. "You waddle through space like newborn creatures, clinging to physics that we mastered 10,000 years ago. Your fastest ships would take decades to cross what we travel in days." A small alien that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. "I visited Earth once, out of curiosity. Your people still use physical currency in some regions, physical coins and paper. It was like visiting a museum of ancient civilizations." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Taiwan felt heat rising in his cheeks, but forced himself to remain calm. Losing his temper would only prove their point, that humans were too primitive and emotional for the Council. The Chithari military commander, a particularly large insect with scars across his armored carapace, stood up from his seat. "Perhaps we should be grateful that humanity remains so backward. Can you imagine if these aggressive creatures had real power? They still fight wars among themselves over invisible lines on their own planet. We have had peace on Earth for 20 years, Taiwan said, his voice harder now. We have unified our world governments and 20 years. The Chithari commander's laughter was a harsh, chittering sound. My species has had peace for 3,000 years. 20 years is barely a moment, a breath. You celebrate it like an achievement worthy of galactic recognition. The Varathian ambassador raised one of his crystalline appendages, and the chamber fell silent. Captain Taiwan, let me speak plainly. Humanity is classified as a Level 2 civilization. You have achieved space travel, yes. You have built stations in orbit around your planet, yes, but you lack the fundamental understanding of reality that separates the truly advanced species from the children playing with technology they barely comprehend. He gestured at the other council members. Every species in this chamber has mastered at least 5-dimensional travel. The Prelians can navigate through 6 dimensions. The Nexari can perceive 7, though they cannot yet travel through all of them. What can humanity do? You push yourselves through normal space using controlled explosions. It is quaint, adorable even, but it is not advanced. Taewon looked at Hana. She gave him a tiny nod. They had expected this. They had hoped the Council might see past their technological limitations to humanity's potential, but they had prepared for rejection. "When might we apply again?" Taewon asked, keeping his voice neutral. The Varathian's colors shifted to a pale blue, which meant he was being thoughtful, or at least pretending to be. "Perhaps in another century, when you have evolved beyond your crude understanding of physics. If you work very hard and dedicate all your resources to scientific advancement, you might achieve 5-dimensional capability in, let us be generous and say 200 years? 200 years, Taewon repeated. Yes, and then you may reapply. Until then, humanity remains classified as a Level 2 civilization. Unworthy of coalition membership, but interesting enough to observe from a distance, like watching young animals learn to hunt." The other council members made sounds of agreement. The discussion was over. Humanity had been judged and found lacking. What none of them knew, what Taewon and Hana knew but would never reveal, was that while they had been traveling to this meeting, something remarkable was happening back in human space. Far above Earth, in a shipyard that orbited in the dark between the Moon and Mars, a vessel sat waiting. It had been waiting for 7 years, hidden from the galaxy's eyes, protected by every security protocol humanity could devise. The KHSS Indomitable was not like any ship the galaxy had ever seen. It did not travel through 5 dimensions. It did not waddle through space on fusion drives. It existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, and when its crew activated its engines, it could step through reality itself, like a person walking through an open door. Taewon thought about that ship as the Varathian dismissed them with a wave of his crystalline hand. He thought about the scientists and engineers who had worked in secret for years, who had solved problems that the galaxy's best minds said were impossible. He thought about the crew training right now to operate technology that would make these laughing aliens choke on their contempt. As he and Hana walked out of the chamber, their footsteps echoing in the vast space, Taewon heard one last comment from the Chitauri commander. "Perhaps we should send a fleet to Earth, remind these humans of their place in the universe. A small demonstration of real power might teach them humility." The other aliens laughed at this suggestion, but the Chitauri commander was not joking. Taewon could see it in the way his mandibles moved. Outside the chamber, standing in the corridor where no one could hear them, Hana finally let her anger show. "They treat us like we are nothing, like we are stupid children." Taewon pulled out his secure communicator, a small device that used quantum entanglement to send messages instantly across any distance. The galaxy thought this technology was impossible too, but humanity had made it work 5 years ago. He typed a simple message to Director Jin Ho back on Earth. "They rejected us again. They are considering military action. Recommend Phase 1. The response came back in seconds. "Agreed. Initiating protocols. The Indomitable will be ready within 3 months." Taewon looked at Hana and smiled for the first time since they had entered the council chambers. "Let them laugh," he said quietly. "In 3 months, the laughing will stop, and then we will see who is primitive." Hana smiled back, and in that smile was the confidence of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. The galaxy thought it knew what humanity was capable of. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. The real demonstration was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the humiliation at the Galactic Council. 3 months since the aliens had laughed at humanity's request to join their club. 3 months since the Chitauri commander had suggested teaching Earth a lesson about its place in the universe. Now that lesson was coming, but not in the way anyone expected. Fleet Admiral Yong-sik stood on the bridge of the KHSS Sejong, humanity's flagship cruiser. Through the main view screen, he could see the dark expanse of space near the Kepler colony, one of humanity's newest settlements. 12 human ships floated in defensive formation, their crews ready for what was coming. "Admiral, sensors are picking up dimensional distortions," reported Tactical Officer Sumi from her station. Her voice was calm, but Yong-sik could hear the tension underneath. 40 ships emerging from hyperspace. Chitauri signatures confirmed. Yong-sik nodded slowly. The intelligence reports had been accurate. The Chitauri Empire had decided to make good on their commander's threat. 40 warships against humanity's 12. The aliens expected this to be over quickly. On the view screen, the Chitauri fleet materialized from hyperspace like ghosts becoming solid. Their ships were massive things, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Each one was 3 times larger than the Sejong. Their hulls were covered in the same armored plating that had made the Chitauri nearly invincible in every battle they had fought for the past 1,000 years. The communication channel crackled to life. A harsh, clicking voice filled the bridge. "Human fleet, this is Battle Commander Zendar of the Chitauri Empire. You have been judged unworthy and arrogant. Your colony will be claimed as Chitauri territory. Your ships will surrender immediately or they will be destroyed. You have one of your minutes to comply." Yong-sik looked at his crew. Young faces, most of them. They had trained for this moment, but training was different from reality. 12 ships against 40. The odds looked impossible. But Yong-sik knew something the Chitauri did not. He knew about the ship waiting in the darkness between dimensions. He knew about the technology that would make the Chitauri's weapons and armor meaningless. "Open a channel to the Chitauri," he said calmly. "Channel open, sir." "Battle Commander Zendar, this is Fleet Admiral Yong-sik of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your threat is noted and rejected. You have entered human space without permission. You have threatened our citizens. Leave now or face consequences you cannot imagine." The response was exactly what Yong-sik expected. Harsh, clicking laughter filled the channel. "Consequences? You threaten us with consequences? Your primitive ships are no match for Chitauri might. We will give you a demonstration of real power, human. Perhaps then you will learn your place." The channel closed. On the view screen, the Chitauri ships began moving into attack formation. Sumi's hands flew across her console. "Admiral, they are powering up weapons. All 40 ships. They are targeting our defensive grid and the colony below." This was the moment. Yong-sik reached for the secure communicator on his command chair. He spoke 3 words, carefully and clearly. "Heaven's Gate opens." The message traveled through quantum space, reaching its destination instantly. Far away, in the Seoul orbital shipyard that floated hidden between dimensions, Commander Dae-hyun received those 3 words on his own communicator. He had been waiting 7 years for this moment. 7 years of training, testing, and preparing. 7 years of keeping the greatest secret humanity had ever created. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dae-hyun said to his crew, his voice steady despite the electricity he felt in the air. "This is what we have been preparing for. Engineering, bring the 7th dimensional manifold online." Chief Engineer Hye-jin sat at her station, her fingers poised over controls that represented years of theoretical mathematics and experimental physics. She had spent her entire adult life working on the equations that made this possible. Equations that every alien scientist in the galaxy said were impossible. "Manifold reactors 1 through 7 activating," she announced. "Dimensional barriers are thinning. We are beginning the Pierce sequence." Around her, the ship began to hum with energy that existed in frequencies normal matter could not detect. The Indomitable was not moving through space. It was moving through the very fabric of reality itself, sliding between dimensions like a key sliding into a lock. 20 seconds to dimensional breach, Hyejin said. 15 seconds, 10 seconds. Daehyun watched the readings on his command display. Everything was working perfectly. All crew, prepare for transition. Navigator Sang-min, lock coordinates on the Kepler colony. Appear at position Delta 7, between the human fleet and the Chitauri attackers. Coordinates locked, Commander, Sang-min confirmed. His hands moved across his navigation console with practiced precision. He was navigating through dimensions that most species did not even know existed. 5 seconds, Hyejin counted down. 4, 3, 2, 1, breach. The Indomitable stopped existing in normal space and began existing everywhere at once. Back at the Kepler colony, Battle Commander Zendar watched his fleet prepare to fire. The human ships were holding position. Not fleeing as he expected. Foolish. Brave, perhaps, but foolish. Their deaths would serve as a lesson to other primitive species who thought they could challenge the established order. All weapons, fire on my command, he ordered. Target the human flagship first. We will destroy their leader and watch the others scatter like... His words died in his throat. Every sensor on his command bridge started screaming alerts simultaneously. Something was appearing in space between his fleet and the human ships, something that should not be possible. The Indomitable materialized into normal space, but it did not arrive the way ships normally did. It did not drop out of hyperspace with a flash of light. It did not accelerate from a distant location. It simply was not there, and then it was, as if it had always been there, and they had just not noticed it before. Zendar stared at his sensor readings in complete confusion. Every scanner showed something different about the human vessel. The mass detectors said it weighed as much as a small moon. The energy sensors said it was putting out power readings that should have melted the ship into vapor. The dimensional scanners, which tracked ships through hyperspace, were showing that this vessel existed in 7 different dimensional states at once. That was impossible. Nothing could exist in more than 5 dimensions. The mathematics did not work. The physics did not allow it. "What manner of trick is this?" Zendar hissed to his crew. "Is this a hologram? Some kind of sensor jamming?" Before anyone could answer, the human ship opened a communication channel. A calm, human voice filled the Chitauri flagship's bridge. "Chitauri fleet, this is Commander Daehyun of the Korean hyperspatial ship Indomitable. You have entered human space with hostile intent. You have threatened our colony. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw. This is your only warning." Zendar felt his mandibles click together in anger. A warning from humans? This was an insult beyond measure. "All ships, fire at will! Destroy that vessel!" The Chitauri fleet opened fire with everything they had. 40 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Plasma beams that could cut through mountains. Kinetic missiles that traveled at a significant fraction of light speed. Exotic radiation weapons that could disable any electronic system. The combined firepower could have destroyed a small planet. The weapons converged on the Indomitable's position, and then, impossibly, they passed right through the ship without touching it. On the Indomitable's bridge, Navigator Sang-min had executed the defensive maneuver perfectly. "Deploying 7th dimensional phase shift," he announced calmly, "shifting our dimensional anchor by 0.3 degrees perpendicular to standard space." To outside observers, the Indomitable looked like it had not moved at all. It stayed in exactly the same position. But in the 7th dimension, the ship had stepped aside in a direction that did not exist in normal space. The weapons passed through where the ship appeared to be, but the Indomitable was actually somewhere else entirely, occupying a space that was both there and not there simultaneously. Daehyun watched the Chitauri weapons pass harmlessly through his ship. He allowed himself a small smile. "Their turn is over," he said quietly. "Weapons Officer Kwan Su, You may demonstrate our capabilities. Seventh dimensional lance, minimum power. Target the flagship's shield generators only. Quan Su had been waiting for this moment since he had first seen the weapon specifications 2 years ago. Lance charging. Targeting solution locked. Firing. The weapon did not fire through normal space. It reached through the seventh dimension, following a path that bypassed all conventional defenses. The lance touched the Chitauri flagship's shield generators and simply turned them off, as easily as flipping a light switch. No explosion, no damage, just shields going offline in an instant. Second shot, Daehyun ordered. Disable their engines. The lance fired again. The flagship's massive engines went dark. Third shot, disable their weapons. The flagship's weapon ports shut down, all of them simultaneously. 3 seconds. 3 shots. The Chitauri's most powerful warship had been reduced to a floating piece of metal that could not move, could not shoot, and could not defend itself. Zendar stared at his dead controls in disbelief. This was not possible. Nothing could pierce Chitauri shields. Nothing could disable their engines so precisely. This was beyond any technology he had ever seen. On his view screen, he watched as the human ship moved. No, not moved. It appeared in front of every single one of his remaining 39 ships simultaneously. 40 positions at once, each one real, each one solid. And then, one by one, his ships went dark. Weapons disabled, engines dead, shields offline, all with surgical precision, all without destroying a single ship or harming a single crew member. In less than a minute, his entire fleet had been rendered helpless. The human voice came back on the communication channel. Battle Commander Zendar, your fleet is now defenseless. You will return to Chitauri space and inform your empire of what you witnessed here. Humanity is no longer your prey. We are no longer the primitive species you can threaten and dismiss. Tell your leaders, the galaxy has changed. They need to change with it. Zendar said nothing. What could he say? His fleet of 40 warships had been defeated without firing a single effective shot by one ship. One human ship using technology that should not exist. As his disabled fleet began the long, humiliating journey back to Chitauri space, towed by automated drones the humans provided, Zendar realized something that made his armored body go cold. The humans had not tried to destroy them. They had not sought revenge for the threats and mockery. They had simply proven their point and let them live. That restraint was more terrifying than any show of force could have been. The video spread across the galactic network like wildfire. Within hours of the Chitauri fleet's humiliating defeat, every species in the galaxy had seen the footage. Sensors from dozens of nearby systems had recorded the entire battle, and now everyone was watching the impossible become real. On the Vorathian homeworld, Ambassador Kelthor watched the recording for the 17th time. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that he could not control, cycling rapidly between confusion, fear, and something that might have been respect. Each time he watched, he understood less about what he was seeing. Replay the weapons sequence again, he ordered his analysis team. The holographic display showed the moment when the human ship fired its weapon, but calling it a weapon felt wrong. The Chitauri shields simply stopped working. Their engines simply stopped running. Their weapons simply went offline. There was no energy beam visible on any spectrum, no missile trajectory, no explosion. The human ship reached out through something, through somewhere, and turned off the Chitauri fleet like someone turning off lights in a room. How? Kelthor asked, though he was talking more to himself than his team. How do they bypass shields? How do they disable systems without damaging them? How do they exist in multiple locations simultaneously? His lead scientist, a younger Vorathian named Pixnell, gestured at the data streams flowing across her workstation. Ambassador, I have analyzed every sensor reading from this engagement. The human ship exists in 7 distinct dimensional frequencies. 7. We can barely perceive 5 dimensions. The Prelians, our most advanced neighbors, can navigate through 6. But 7? That level of dimensional manipulation was considered purely theoretical. Most of our best physicists believed it was mathematically impossible. Kelthor thought back to 3 months ago, when he had stood in the council chambers and laughed at Captain Taiwan, when he had dismissed humanity as primitive children playing with fusion drives, when he had suggested they return in a century or two, after they had evolved past their crude understanding of physics. His colors darkened with shame. The humans had not needed a century. They had already surpassed everyone while the galaxy mocked them. "Pull up everything we have on human scientific development for the past decade," Kelthor ordered. "I want to know how we missed this." Pixinel worked quickly, bringing up intelligence reports and trade data. "Ambassador, this is strange. According to our monitoring, humanity has made normal progress in conventional technologies. Their public research papers show steady advancement in fusion efficiency, material science, and computer processing. But there is nothing, absolutely nothing, about dimensional physics beyond basic 4-dimensional space-time theory." "They kept it secret," Kelthor said. "While we laughed at them, they were developing this in secret. How long? How many years did they work on this without anyone knowing?" On the Chithari homeworld, the Imperial Palace was in chaos. Battle Commander Zendar stood before the War Council, his body still bearing the shame of his defeat. His entire fleet had been disabled by a single human vessel. He had returned home expecting execution for his failure, but instead, he found something worse: fear. The council members, the most powerful military leaders in the Chithari Empire, watched the battle recording in silence. None of them spoke. None of them made their usual aggressive clicking sounds. They simply watched as humanity demonstrated technology that made their 1,000-year military supremacy obsolete. Finally, War Master Krendal, the oldest and most experienced military mind in the Empire, spoke. "Commander Zendar, I need you to answer a question truthfully. When this human ship disabled your fleet, did you sense any hostile intent? Any malice?" Zendar thought carefully before answering. "No, War Master. If anything, I sensed calculation and control. They could have destroyed us. Every analysis my crew ran afterward confirmed this. Their weapon could have overloaded our reactors instead of just disabling them. They could have torn our ships apart. Instead, they surgically removed our ability to fight and then provided us with towing drones to help us return home safely." Krendal's mandibles clicked slowly. "That is what concerns me most. An enemy that destroys you in anger is predictable. An enemy that defeats you completely and then shows mercy is far more dangerous. They are demonstrating that they are advanced enough to defeat us and wise enough to choose when to show that power." Another council member, a younger warrior named Tekshi, spoke up. "Should we not prepare a larger fleet, gather our full military strength, and respond with overwhelming force?" The question hung in the air. Krendal turned to look at Tekshi, and his colors showed disappointment. "And what would we attack them with? Technology they can bypass, weapons that cannot touch them. They exist in dimensions we cannot reach. Tell me, Tekshi, how do you fight an enemy who can step outside of reality itself?" The chamber fell silent again. The reality of their situation was settling in. The Chithari Empire, which had conquered 17 star systems and crushed every opponent for 1,000 years, had just encountered a force they could not defeat. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in 100 different languages and 1,000 different meeting rooms. The Prelian Commonwealth called an emergency session of their science directorate. The Nexari Collective sent diplomatic envoys scrambling to open communications with Earth. The Zerillian Commonwealth, who had been silent observers for millennia, requested an urgent meeting with human representatives. But the most significant meeting was the one that had not yet been called. The Galactic Council had not convened since the battle at Kepler Colony. The ambassadors were waiting, watching, trying to understand what humanity's demonstration meant for the balance of galactic power. On Earth, in the Global Defense Initiative headquarters in Seoul, Director Jin Ho sat in his office and watched the galactic communications network light up with activity. Every major species was trying to contact Earth. Some wanted to open diplomatic relations. Some wanted to request technological exchanges. Some simply wanted to know if humanity intended to use this new power to seek revenge for past insults. Captain Tae-wan entered the office, still wearing his formal uniform from the Council rejection 3 months ago. He had not returned to Earth since the battle, instead waiting at a nearby station to see how the galaxy would respond. "The Varathian ambassador has requested a meeting," Tae-wan said, handing Jin Ho a datapad. "He is asking for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. He wants to offer humanity immediate membership with full privileges." Jin Ho smiled without humor. 3 months ago, he told us to come back in a century. Now he cannot schedule a meeting fast enough. "What will we do?" Tae-wan asked. Jin Ho stood and walked to the window, looking out at the bustling spaceport below. He could see ships coming and going, humanity's expanding presence in space growing every day. "We will accept the meeting, but we will make them wait a few days first. Let them think about what they saw. Let them realize that we are not going to be rushed into anything just because they are suddenly afraid of us." "They are calling us," Tae-wan said quietly. "Dozens of species. Everyone wants to know our intentions." "Good," Jin Ho replied. "Let them call. Let them wonder. For decades, they treated us like children. They dismissed our applications. They laughed at our technology. They suggested teaching us lessons with military force. Now they can spend some time thinking about how badly they misjudged us." In the Seoul Orbital Shipyard, Commander Dae-hyun gave his crew shore leave for the first time in months. They had earned it. The Indomitable had performed flawlessly, and his crew had executed every maneuver with precision. Chief Engineer Hae-jin remained on board, running diagnostics on the seventh-dimensional systems. She wanted to make sure everything was ready for whatever came next. As she worked, she thought about the 7 years she had spent developing these systems. 7 years of being told she was wasting her time on impossible physics. 7 years of working in secret, knowing that if she failed, humanity would remain at the mercy of species who viewed them as primitives. But she had not failed. She had succeeded beyond even her own expectations. The dimensional manifold had worked perfectly, allowing the Indomitable to slip between realities as easily as a person walking through a doorway. The seventh-dimensional lance had disabled the Chitauri ships without causing any casualties. Every system had performed exactly as designed. Navigator Sang-min found her in the engineering section, looking over the manifold reactors. "You should take some time off too," he said. "You have been working for 18 hours straight." Hae-jin shook her head. "I need to make sure everything is perfect. The galaxy is watching us now. Every move we make will be analyzed by alien scientists trying to figure out how we did this." "Let them analyze," Sang-min said with a smile. "They will not understand it. They are still thinking in 5 dimensions. We are operating in 7. That gap in understanding is what gives us the advantage." "For now," Hae-jin said, "but eventually they will catch up. We need to stay ahead. We need to keep improving." Sang-min nodded. Director Jin Ho said the same thing at the briefing yesterday. He is already planning the next generation of ships. Bigger, more powerful, with capabilities that will make the Indomitable look like a training vessel. Hae-jin looked at the reactors, thinking about the future. "How many ships are we building?" 12 more in construction right now. Plans for 50 within 5 years. By the time the galaxy figures out how to counter our current technology, we will have already moved to something new. It was a strategy that made sense. Humanity had always been good at innovation, at finding new solutions to old problems. While the galaxy had spent centuries perfecting their existing technologies, Humans had gone in a completely different direction. They had not tried to improve five-dimensional travel. They had skipped directly to 7 dimensions. Back on the Vorathian homeworld, Ambassador Kelthor finally made his decision. He composed a formal message to Earth, one that would be seen by every species in the galaxy. The message was simple, direct, and represented the most significant shift in galactic politics in over 1,000 years. To the human government of Earth, the Galactic Council formally requests an emergency session to discuss humanity's application for membership. We acknowledge that our previous rejections were based on incomplete information about your capabilities. We ask that you send representatives to the Council chambers at your earliest convenience. We are prepared to offer full membership status with voting privileges on all Council matters, including the Security Assembly. We look forward to welcoming humanity as equals among the civilized species of the galaxy. The message was transmitted, and then Kelthor waited. His crystalline body pulsed with nervous energy. This was not how things were supposed to work. Species were supposed to slowly earn their way into the Council through centuries of proven reliability. They were not supposed to demonstrate such overwhelming technological superiority that the Council had no choice but to accept them immediately. But that was exactly what humanity had done. They had changed the rules by showing that the old rules no longer applied. The response from Earth came 3 days later. Captain Taiwan would return to the Council chambers, but this time he would not be asking for membership. He would be negotiating the terms of humanity's entry as an equal partner. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. Now the galaxy would learn what it meant to have humanity as a member of their council, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Galactic Council chambers looked different this time. Captain Taiwan noticed it immediately as he walked through the massive doors. The elevated seats where the alien ambassadors sat seemed lower somehow, or perhaps he was standing taller. The chamber that had felt overwhelming 3 months ago now felt almost welcoming. Lieutenant Hana walked beside him again, but this time she carried a data pad containing technical specifications that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. She had argued against sharing too much information, but Director Jin Ho had been clear. Humanity needed to demonstrate that they were willing to work with others, not dominate them. Every seat in the chamber was filled. For the first time in 1,200 years, every member species had sent their highest-ranking officials. The ambassadors who had laughed at Taiwan's last visit now sat quietly, watching him with expressions that ranged from respect to fear to barely concealed curiosity. The Vorathian ambassador spoke first, but his tone was completely different from their last meeting. His crystalline body pulsed with muted blue colors that indicated humility and respect. Captain Taiwan, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our gratitude for your willingness to meet with us. We understand that our previous treatment of humanity was inappropriate. Taiwan allowed himself a small smile. Inappropriate. That was one way to describe being laughed at and dismissed as primitives. But he had not come here for an apology. He had come to establish humanity's place in the galaxy. The Council recognizes that we made errors in judgment regarding humanity's technological capabilities, the Vorathian continued. We wish to formally offer Earth immediate membership in the Galactic Council with full privileges and a seat on the Security Assembly. Taiwan exchanged a glance with Hana. This was the moment they had prepared for. We accept the Council's offer, he said clearly, with conditions. A murmur ran through the chamber. Conditions? No species had ever been in a position to make conditions for their council membership. Usually, applicants spent decades proving their worthiness and accepting whatever terms were offered. The Vorathians' colors shifted slightly toward orange, showing surprise. What conditions does humanity propose? Hana stepped forward and activated her data pad, projecting holographic displays throughout the chamber. First, Humanity requests that all current trade restrictions on Earth be immediately removed. We want full access to galactic markets and the right to establish trade agreements with any willing species. The Prelian ambassador, a floating mass of gas named Vexmore, swirled thoughtfully. That is reasonable. The trade restrictions were based on your classification as a Level 2 civilization. Given your demonstrated capabilities, we can certainly revise that classification. Second, Hana continued, we request the establishment of a joint scientific research station in neutral space. This station will be open to all Council species who wish to collaborate on advanced physics research. Humanity will share some of our dimensional manipulation techniques with species who demonstrate a genuine commitment to peaceful research. This caused more murmuring in the chamber. Several ambassadors leaned forward in their seats. The idea that humanity was willing to share their incredible technology, even partially, was unexpected. The Chithari ambassador, a smaller and much more diplomatic insect than Battle Commander Zendar, clicked his mandibles nervously before speaking. Captain Taiwan, may I ask a question? The weapon your ship used against our fleet, the Dimensional Lance, will this technology be shared at this research station? Taiwan looked directly at the Chithari ambassador. The weapon systems will not be shared, but the fundamental principles of seventh-dimensional physics will be available to researchers who qualify. We believe that scientific advancement should be collaborative, not hoarded. However, we are not naive. Weapons technology will remain under human control until such time as we believe it can be trusted in other hands. The Chithari ambassador nodded, his body language showing relief. That is fair, more than fair, given how we treated your people. Third, Hana said, bringing up another holographic display, humanity requests the right to maintain our own defensive fleet and to establish military protocols that are independent of the Council's command structure. We will participate in Council peacekeeping operations, but Earth's defense remains under human authority. This request was more controversial. The Nexari ambassador, a being that looked like a collection of floating crystalline shards, spoke up. The Council has always maintained unified command of all military operations. This request could set a dangerous precedent. Director Jin Ho had prepared Taiwan for this objection. With respect, Ambassador, every species in this chamber maintains some level of independent military capability. The difference is that humanity is being transparent about our intentions. We have demonstrated our technology. We have shown restraint in its use. Now we are asking for the right to defend ourselves and our colonies without requiring Council approval for every defensive action. The Varathian ambassador's colors shifted through several patterns before settling on a thoughtful blue. I believe humanity's request is reasonable. They are not asking to operate outside Council law. They are asking for the same defensive autonomy that many of our more powerful members already exercise in practice, if not in official policy. The vote was called. One by one, the ambassadors indicated their approval. Even the Chithari voted in favor, recognizing that opposing humanity's membership would be both pointless and potentially dangerous. The motion passed unanimously, but the real surprise came next. The Xerillian Commonwealth ambassador, a being named Kalseth who had remained silent throughout the meeting, stood and requested permission to speak. The Xerillians were legendary for their isolation. They had been council members for 3,000 years but rarely participated in galactic affairs. Captain Taiwan, Kalseth said, his voice warm despite coming through a translator. The Xerillian Commonwealth has watched humanity's development for many years. We have observed your species overcoming internal conflicts, unifying your world government, and reaching for the stars with determination that impressed us. But what truly caught our attention was not your technological achievement. It was what you did with that achievement. Taiwan listened carefully. Where was this going? You created a weapon system capable of destroying any fleet in the galaxy, Kalseth continued. When you encountered an aggressive force that had threatened your people, you disabled their ships without destroying them. You did not seek revenge. You did not demand tribute. You simply proved your point and let them leave. That restraint revealed more about humanity's character than any technology demonstration ever could. Kalseth gestured at the assembled ambassadors. Most species in this chamber, when they first achieved significant military power, used it to conquer their neighbors. The Chithari expanded through force. The Varathians absorbed 3 smaller civilizations. Even my own people, the Xerillians, fought wars of dominance when we were younger. But humanity, when given the power to dominate, chose instead to defend and to teach. The chamber was completely silent now. Everyone was listening. The Xerillian Commonwealth wishes to propose a formal alliance with humanity, Kalseth announced. We will share our knowledge of 6-dimensional physics and offer access to our most advanced shipyard facilities. In return, we ask only that humanity continues to exercise the wisdom you have already shown. Taiwan felt his heart racing. A formal alliance with the Xerillians was worth more than membership in the entire council. The Xerillians were respected by every species in the galaxy, and their technology, while not as advanced as humanity's 7th-dimensional systems, was still centuries ahead of most other civilizations. On behalf of Earth, I accept the Xerillian Commonwealth's offer of alliance, Taiwan said formally. We look forward to working together toward a more peaceful and prosperous galaxy. The meeting continued for several more hours, working out the details of humanity's council membership and the terms of the Xerillian alliance. Trade agreements were negotiated, research protocols were established, defense zones were defined. But the most important moment came at the end, when the Varathian ambassador approached Taiwan privately as the chamber was emptying. Captain, I need to say something to you personally, the Varathian said, his colors showing genuine remorse. When you stood here 3 months ago, I laughed at you. I dismissed your people as primitives. I was wrong, and my error in judgment nearly caused a catastrophic war. I want you to know that I have learned from this mistake. Taiwan studied the crystalline being for a moment before responding. Ambassador, I appreciate your honesty, but understand this. Humanity did not develop 7th-dimensional technology to prove you wrong. We did it because we needed to survive in a galaxy that treated us like children. The mockery and dismissal we faced drove us to excel, yes, but it also taught us something important. What is that? The Varathian asked. It taught us never to underestimate anyone based on their current limitations. Every species in this galaxy has potential. Every civilization has unique strengths. The mistake is not in being less advanced. The mistake is in assuming that current status is permanent. The Varathian's colors shifted to a warm gold, indicating understanding and respect. That is a wise perspective. Perhaps humanity will teach us more than just physics. As Taiwan and Hana left the council chambers, they walked past dozens of alien ambassadors who nodded respectfully or made gestures of welcome in their various ways. The transformation was complete. Humanity had gone from being rejected and mocked to being accepted and respected in just 3 months. Back on Earth, Director Jin Ho received the news and immediately called a meeting with Admiral Yong-sik and Commander Dae Hyun. They gathered in the Seoul headquarters, looking out at the shipyard where 3 more 7th-dimensional ships were under construction. We did it, Jin Ho said simply. Full council membership, Xerillian alliance, and we managed to do it without making more enemies than we needed to. Admiral Yong-sik nodded. The question now is what we do with this position. We have power. We have respect. How do we use it? Commander Dae Hyun, still fresh from his successful demonstration at Kepler Colony, spoke up. We use it carefully. We remember how it felt to be dismissed and underestimated. We treat other species the way we wished to be treated. And we never forget that power without wisdom is just violence waiting to happen. Jinho smiled. Exactly. We have changed the galaxy's power structure. Now we need to help shape what comes next, not through force, but through example. In the engineering lab, Chief Engineer Haye Jin was already working on the next generation of dimensional technology. The 7-dimensional systems had worked perfectly, but she could see possibilities for even more advanced applications. 8 dimensions, 9. Perhaps eventually, humanity could master navigation through all the dimensions that theoretical physics suggested existed. But that would take time. For now, it was enough that humanity had proven itself. Proven that a species could go from being mocked to being respected. Proven that technological advancement combined with moral wisdom was more powerful than either one alone. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's crude fusion drives and primitive understanding of physics. Now the galaxy watched as humanity demonstrated that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage of all. The laughter had stopped. The respect had begun. And humanity's true journey among the stars was only just starting. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. 6 months since Captain Taiwan had stood in the council chambers and negotiated Earth's entry as an equal member. 6 months since the galaxy learned that humans were not the primitive species they had assumed. The changes had been extraordinary. Admiral Yongsik stood on the bridge of the KHSS Sejong, watching through the view screen as 3 new 7th-dimensional ships conducted formation drills nearby. The KHSS Gwangaeto, the KHSS Yisunsin, and the KHSS Dangun moved through space with the grace of dancers, their crews now fully trained in the operation of technology that still amazed the galaxy. Formation looking good, reported Tactical Officer Sumi, who had been promoted to his executive officer after the Kepler colony incident. All 3 ships are maintaining perfect dimensional synchronization. Yongsik nodded with satisfaction. The fleet was growing. 12 more ships were under construction in various shipyards across human space. Within 2 years, Earth would have a defensive fleet that could protect every colony and trading route humanity had established. But the real changes were happening planet-side. On Earth, in the gleaming new Seoul spaceport, Director Jin Ho prepared to greet a delegation that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Representatives from 17 different species were arriving to tour the joint research station that humanity had promised to build. The station, officially named the Unity Science Platform, would be humanity's gift to the galaxy. A place where researchers from all species could work together on advanced physics, sharing knowledge and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Jinho watched as the first shuttle landed, carrying scientists from the Vorathian Crystal Collective. Their lead researcher, a brilliant physicist named Telvara, had been one of the first to request access to the station. She had spent weeks studying the limited information humanity had released about 7th-dimensional physics, and her published papers showed a deep understanding of the principles involved. Director Jin Ho, Telvara said as she emerged from the shuttle, her crystalline body pulsing with excited gold colors. Thank you for this opportunity. My entire research team is eager to begin work. We are pleased to have you, Jinho replied warmly. The station will be operational in 3 months. Until then, you and your colleagues are welcome to study at our Earth facilities. More shuttles landed throughout the day. Prelian gas beings in their containment suits, Chithari scientists who clicked their mandibles with genuine enthusiasm rather than mockery, even a small delegation from the Zerillian Commonwealth, led by a physicist named Rindal, who had spent 2 centuries studying dimensional theory. The Chithari chief scientist, a surprisingly gentle insect named Pelkon, approached Jin-Ho with visible nervousness. "Director, I must apologize on behalf of my people. Battle Commander Zendar's aggression toward your colony was wrong. We have learned a difficult lesson about humility." Jin-Ho gestured dismissively. "The past is past. What matters is how we move forward. Your people have valuable expertise in material science that will be crucial for the research station. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish together." Meanwhile, aboard the KHSS Indomitable, Commander Dae-hyun led his crew on their first official mission as part of the Galactic Security Fleet. They were responding to a distress call from a frontier mining colony that was under attack by raiders. The raiders were a collection of mercenary ships from various species, criminals who preyed on isolated settlements too far from council protection. They had been terrorizing the frontier for years, always disappearing before security forces could respond. "Approaching the colony system now," reported Navigator Sang-min. "Sensors detect 12 raider ships in orbit around the colony. They are loading stolen cargo onto their vessels." Dae-hyun studied the tactical display. 12 ships, all armed but none particularly powerful. Against a normal security force, they could fight or flee. Against the Indomitable, they had no chance. "Navigator, execute Protocol 7. We will appear simultaneously at 7 positions surrounding the raider fleet. Weapons Officer Kwan Su, prepare to disable their engines on my command." The Indomitable shifted through the 7th dimension, and suddenly it was everywhere. The raiders looked up from their looting to see a single human ship occupying 7 positions at once, each one real and solid. Dae-hyun opened a communication channel. "Raider vessels, this is the KHSS Indomitable of the Galactic Security Fleet. Power down your weapons immediately and prepare to be boarded. You have 30 seconds to comply." The response was exactly what Dae-hyun expected. The raiders tried to run. Their ships powered up and attempted to scatter in different directions. But there was nowhere to run when your opponent could exist in multiple places simultaneously. Kwan Su fired the dimensional lance 12 times in quick succession, each shot perfectly calibrated to disable engines without causing hull damage. Within seconds, all 12 raider ships were floating helplessly in space. "Colony ships launching from the surface," Sumi reported. "They are sending thanks and offering to assist with securing the prisoners." The raid had been stopped in less than a minute. No casualties, no destruction, just swift, precise enforcement of galactic law. News of the incident spread quickly, adding to humanity's growing reputation. The raiders had been a problem for years, and the Indomitable had solved it in seconds. Other frontier colonies began requesting human security patrols. Trade routes that had been dangerous for decades suddenly became safe when 7th-dimensional ships started patrolling them. Back on Earth, Captain Tae-wan had retired from active military service, but he was far from idle. He now served as an instructor at the Seoul Naval Academy, teaching courses on galactic diplomacy and cross-species relations. His classroom was unlike any in history. Sitting at the desks were students from 24 different species. Humans sat beside Chithari. Varathians studied next to Prelians. Even a few Xerillian students had enrolled, eager to learn from the species that had changed galactic politics so dramatically. "Today we are going to discuss the concept of strategic patience," Tae-wan told his class. "When humanity first applied for council membership, we were rejected. We could have responded with anger or given up in despair. Instead, we continued to develop our capabilities while maintaining diplomatic relations. Can anyone tell me why this approach was more effective than confrontation?" A Chithari student raised one of his many legs. "Because confrontation would have united the galaxy against you. By waiting and developing in secret, you gave them no reason to see you as a threat until you were ready to prove your capabilities." "Exactly," Tae-wan confirmed. "Power without timing is wasted. We needed to be strong enough to defend ourselves, but wise enough to choose when to reveal that strength." Lieutenant Hana, now Captain Hana, and commanding officer of the KHSS Dangun, stood on her bridge and felt a surge of pride. Her ship was on patrol near the Xyrillian border, working alongside 2 Xyrillian vessels on a joint training exercise. The Xyrillian commander, an experienced officer named Vorzan, had been impressed by the Dangun's capabilities. "Captain Hana, your crew's precision is remarkable. You have been operating 7th-dimensional technology for less than a year, yet your navigator executes maneuvers that our best pilots take decades to master." Hana smiled. "We learned from necessity. When you know that survival depends on mastering something difficult, you find ways to master it quickly." In the engineering sections across human space, Chief Engineer Hia Jin had become something of a galactic celebrity. Her name was known throughout the scientific community, and researchers from every species wanted to work with her. She had published several papers on dimensional physics, carefully balancing the need to share knowledge with the need to maintain security. Today, she was giving a lecture at the newly completed Unity Science platform. The audience included some of the brightest minds in the galaxy, all eager to understand how humanity had achieved the impossible. "The key to 7th-dimensional manipulation," Hia Jin explained, gesturing at complex equations floating in holographic displays, "is not to force your way through dimensional barriers. Instead, you must resonate with the natural frequencies of higher dimensions. Think of it like music. You do not break a glass by hitting it harder. You break it by finding its resonant frequency and amplifying it." A Vorathian scientist raised a crystalline appendage. "But the energy requirements for maintaining dimensional resonance must be enormous. How do you generate sufficient power?" Hia Jin smiled. "That is one of the secrets we are not ready to share yet. But I can tell you that it involves tapping into the zero-point energy field in ways that conventional physics said were impossible. Sometimes impossible just means nobody has found the right approach yet." The lecture continued for hours, with scientists asking questions and debating theories. This was what Jin Ho had envisioned when he proposed the research station. Not humanity hoarding its knowledge, but humanity leading a collaborative effort to advance galactic understanding. Months turned into years. The Unity Science platform became the premier research facility in the galaxy. The joint patrols with Xyrillian forces led to a dramatic decrease in piracy and border conflicts. Trade between Earth and other Council worlds flourished, bringing prosperity to human colonies. But the most significant change was in how other species viewed humanity. The mockery had completely disappeared. In its place was genuine respect, and sometimes even admiration. Human diplomats were sought after for their negotiation skills. Human engineers were recruited by other species to help with complex projects. Human philosophers and artists found eager audiences across the galaxy. Admiral Dae Hyun, now commanding a small fleet of 7th-dimensional ships, reflected on how far they had come. He stood in his ready room aboard the Indomitable, looking at a holographic display that showed the expanding network of human colonies and trading posts. His door chimed. "Come in." It was Commander Sang Min, bringing the latest intelligence reports. "Admiral, we have confirmed reports of 3 more species requesting defensive pacts with Earth. They want us to help protect their border regions." Dae Hyun studied the reports. "What does Director Jin Ho think?" "He is inclined to accept, but with conditions. We will help with defense, but we will not interfere with their internal politics. We are guardians, not rulers." "Good," Dae Hyun said. "That is the right approach. We must never forget what it felt like to be dismissed and underestimated. Power is a tool, not an identity." Back on Earth, in a quiet garden near the Seoul headquarters, Captain Taewon met with Director Jin Ho for tea. They were old friends now, having gone through the entire journey together. "Do you ever think about that day in the council chambers?" Taewon asked. When they laughed at us? Jinho smiled. I think about it often, but not with anger. I think about it with gratitude. Gratitude? Taewon was surprised. Yes. Their mockery drove us to excel. Their dismissal made us determined to prove ourselves. If they had accepted us easily, we might never have pushed ourselves to achieve what we did. Sometimes, the obstacles we face are what make us great. Taewon considered this. So you are saying we should thank them for laughing at us? No, Jinho chuckled. But I am saying that we should recognize that every challenge is an opportunity. The galaxy underestimated us, and we used that underestimation as motivation. Now we have not just joined the galactic community. We have helped reshape it into something better. In the years that followed, humanity continued to grow and evolve. New ships were built, new colonies were established, new friendships were formed with species across the galaxy. The seventh-dimensional technology that had been Earth's secret weapon became the foundation for a new era of cooperation and advancement. The Unity Science platform expanded, adding new wings and research facilities. Breakthroughs in dimensional physics led to improvements in medicine, communications, and energy production. The benefits of collaboration flowed to every species in the Council, and through it all, humanity remembered the lessons they had learned. They remembered what it felt like to be dismissed. They remembered the importance of restraint and wisdom. They remembered that power was not about domination, but about responsibility. The Galactic Council chambers, where Taewon had once stood alone and mocked, now featured a permanent seat for Earth's representative. The human delegation was respected and consulted on major decisions. The species that had once laughed now listened. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it. Not through conquest or force, but through innovation, wisdom, and the refusal to accept the limitations others tried to impose. The laughter had stopped long ago. In its place was something far more valuable: partnership, respect, and a shared vision of a better future. And somewhere in the dark between dimensions, new ships were being built, carrying humanity and its allies toward possibilities that had once seemed as impossible as seven-dimensional travel. The journey was far from over. In many ways, it was only beginning. But humanity had proven something important to the galaxy and to themselves, that being underestimated was not a weakness, but an opportunity. That patience and wisdom were as powerful as any weapon, and that the species who had once been told to know their place had instead transcended the very dimensions that confined their rivals. The age of human isolation had ended. The age of human leadership had begun. And the galaxy, once divided by power and contempt, was slowly learning to work together toward something greater than any single species could achieve alone. This was humanity's gift to the stars, not just advanced technology, but the example of what was possible when a species refused to give up, refused to accept limitations, and chose to use power with wisdom rather than arrogance. The story that had begun with laughter ended with hope, and that hope would echo through the galaxy for generations to come.